and welcome to today's session of Remembering John Parakos. We're very lucky to have with us today Kathleen Goldberg, a long-term trainer, Pathwork Trainer, support faculty member, international, been around person within our community. Kathleen, I hope I haven't understated your many, many achievements in the healthcare sector.
I don't think that you've over or under. I'm still defining those things myself. So thank you for the intro and the invitation.
No, very gracious of you. Thank you. Hey, so look, what I really wanted to do is you've been through the development of this work. You worked closely with John and Sigma and many of the others. And really, I wanted to get your view on John and the work. So how did you meet him and how did you come into this work?
I came into this work because I needed my own therapy. And that started in 1974 with a therapist who was in Gestalt training and bioenergetics. And so I did that for a while and went to a workshop with Al Lowen, and I knew that there was a split off, but it wasn't until I was introduced to the lectures, the Pathwork lectures in 1978, that I was beginning to experience what core energetics was, because Pathwork and core energetics were truly married with John and Eva and the work and its development. In fact, John had a divorce from Al in a sense and went on to do core. So I came with that lineage, and I think I met John's legend and story probably in 79 when I went the summer after Eva died to Phoenicia and met him there. And but he was just another one of those legendary people, you know, some workshops, some events, but mostly in the Pathwork Center.
So what was your experience of him when you first met?
Well, he's just such a powerful presence. And because he's such a powerful presence on a physical level, he's also he carries himself with such, I just remembered his silk scarves, his ascots, his suits, his color scheme, his pastels, his intensities, and his flash. Like he could be so contained, and then he could be flash and just go. So that surprised me, but felt familiar to me, and a welcoming sense of verisimilitude, a sense of, yes, I know you. I want to know you. Yeah.
Yes. So a familiarity, an attraction, a sense of safety, a sense of connection.
Not safety.
Okay. Good. No. Thank you. Because I was wondering about that.
No. I knew that he was a brother. I have 5. He was he's an intense character. And if he looks really closely at you, you may confess to things that you don't even know are true, but you be looking, you know? In that sense, he wasn't, he was safe, but not comforting.
Right. Got you.
Yeah.
So in terms of your own process, then what do you find memorable with working with John?
You know, I didn't work with him on an ongoing basis. I think the most memorable was when I had recommended Ken to make contact with John and considered core training, because I knew he was interested. He was casting about, and John and I knew each other from the Pathwork.
Yes.
It was going to New York City from Oregon to meet with him and have a few sessions to determine whether or not it would be appropriate for me to enter into the 3rd year of the core training on the West Coast.
Right.
having done bioenergetics training for 2 years and more core energetics and the path work and helpership and a clinical social worker, I was like, I should be able to get in there,
Come
right?
up for this. Yeah, yeah,
But
you've come in
yeah,
running.
my ego, yeah. So he just put me through my paces, and
Yeah.
and I felt held and stopped and
Mm.
also welcomed and challenged, because I had to go then to California and then meet with the entire group to see
Mhm.
if they could accept me in the training group. And what I
Mhm.
remember is him doing the perfect thing for me, which I still remember, is being in my underwear and kneeling and bending over and in child's pose, really,
Yes.
to ask for them to decide, and that I would be willing to sacrifice and surrender if it wasn't to be. And
Wow.
and he confronted and dissolved my will. He gave me an opportunity to dissolve my will and pride and still have my dignity. And I'm grateful to him for that. And because I assisted him in
Yes.
like body-centered convention, I assisted with the training, I assisted with Sigmar, I promoted things, we had dinner together. He loved my husband. We
Mm.
took him to the hospital when he was having an arrhythmia and needed to have a pacemaker
Yeah.
put in.
Yes.
He trusted me,
Yes.
and I felt like he was never my therapist.
Mhm.
I always felt like there was a way that it's like Ken's the director, he's the doctor, and I've have my own place. It's like I get to surrender into the feminine, and John welcomed that and
Beautiful.
encouraged it.
Yes.
And I loved
Yeah.
being able to witness how he would work with people,
Mhm.
how he would work to and to look at himself and to be pretty open talking about it at times, because I drove with him places. I
Sure.
met with his daughters with him. There were things that were personal in our relationship that I got to meet him in other roles than some of the big transference of him, because I wasn't a New Yorker. I was from Michigan. I was in Oregon and California. He wasn't my daddy.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to see many other sides in what we would call multidimensional relationships, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
I think I always felt like, well, I also, we loved Eva. I didn't know Eva. She died before
Yeah.
I came into the Pathwork to New York. She died
Yes.
that 6 months before anyway, but his love of her and the lectures we shared. And so I think I had a place, and plus I was young and relatively attractive and safe enough that it was a nice place for me to be with
Yes.
him and could get in his business and challenge him. And I think he liked that, because we had our moments.
Well, it was leading up to that. I was just about to ask, the way you're describing it, there got to have been a bit of argy-bargy there somewhere.
Well, sometimes I didn't like how he would, I challenged him around heteronormative stuff, around homosexuality, around his
Yes.
biases with women. I felt
Yes.
in my upper displacement and overcharged system and a nice, good smattering of rigidity, I didn't appreciate being provoked. And his insensitivity at times to trauma, which I have been traumatized and physically abused and raped and a number of things, that his tendency to go right for the jugular, it was like, fuck you.
Too much. Yeah.
And it was like, if I know that's a Reichian thing, and I know that that's there's a good solid evidence for doing some of that, but not all the time. And so I feel like I submitted
Right.
at times, and then felt uh, because of the submission and the desire to learn
Yes.
and to be safe, I could cover up some of my real protest.
Right.
And because he would welcome me,
Mhm.
I could come back to him and put it in his face, and he could, oh, I'm sorry,
Receive that.
like
Yeah.
he could receive it, because I wasn't
Mhm.
just in his business. It was like, John, I think this was off, and you hurt
Mhm.
me. And
Mhm.
what I discovered over the last years that we were together,
Mhm.
the work that I did with him when we had private sessions, or we were talking and assisting, whatever, he was just very sweet. Like, I felt like he wasn't busy trying to break down defenses. He was just melting into more love and gratitude. And I think also in the last years of his life, there was a lot of heartbreak. There was a tremendous heartbreak in the end with the center and with his practice and the institutes, and because he's not an organizational man. He's a charismatic, brilliant, emotion, will type guy. And it wasn't his task to formulate great organizational structures and sustain relationships that grew out of transference and into a mature collaborative thing, because he was the center of the world and so many people's worlds. And so because he wasn't the center of my world, yet he was like a distant king, as it were,
Yes.
I could appreciate his conundrum as we spoke of it numerous times.
I get it. And, you know, the way you've just explained it there really gives me a different insight to the things I've heard. And from by the time we experienced and we had that mellow, for lack of a better way of putting it, guy that you're describing, and each of the bits you said there, I went, ah, yes. But the picture you painted of his journey to get to there, this is quite unique. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because it gives me such an insight for his journey and some of his own personal challenges.
Terrible challenges to have, I mean, really to come here to the States, to marry and have children, and challenges in that marriage, and then to go and then to leave his work, I mean, to have the genesis of bioenergetics and the Reichian work and all the stuff that he did, and to follow his path in the 50s and 60s and early.
Amazing.
It's like, and then he was a passionate visionary. And and it also, I think it broke him open in a way that the later years, we all should have such a break. We should all have the breaking of the ego and the accomplishments and the knowing that you're letting it go, whether it leaves on its own or you leave. We have to let go of things. I feel that as we're talking at 68, it's like, okay, what is it? Can I let go with grace without being broken necessarily?
Yeah. That's the journey, isn't it? And what an insight. And look, I really appreciate you sharing that, because for me, it just really distills so much of the how to where we will end up, the how being the work, the body, the ongoing evolution of it, the amazing things that yourselves and your peers have been doing. And to bring it to something simple, that's been my task for me, is to simplify things. And the way you just said it there just kind of brought it around beautifully for me. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I tell you, I feel like there's Cornergetics has been misunderstood, partly because of its earlier iterations and people's experiences early. So, and then going away from it, and certainly some of the split in the path work and the different iterations of the work, and also the lack of skillfulness. Skillful means, I think I've made a lot of mistakes, and in my efforts to be provocative, because I can be provocative, much less so now. But that the cornergetics, just like the work part of the path or the sense of going somewhere, those are just methods, they're tools to get to a destination. And in a sense, we're already at the destination if we're not so busy cleaning up stuff and purification and transformation and unfolding and la la la, all these stages of the work of exposure. And but it's like to be in truth with oneself, to be God, to be in God, to be in the oneness, and to track when I leave it. I can come back to it, but I leave it and come back to it. So I'm glad for the tools, and sometimes they're nice, they get rusty over there, and it's nice to have them, but they're hanging on the wall sometimes, using different tools.
I hear you. I hear you. So if there was one thing that you could share with us that was uniquely John in your experience, in your memory, that just jumps up in the moment, what would that
be? Holding his hand, driving back from being with his daughter who was in hospice, and back to Mendocino, and talking, and me driving and taking my hand away from him, and him about 5 minutes later said, "Why did you take your hand away?"
Yes.
And I could tell he was very sensitive about it. And I said, "Well, I was driving." And he wanted to be sure that there wasn't something that he said that might have offended me. Right. And it just felt like the boy, the man, the sweet intimacy of that moment. I just felt like, oh, I could just sit here and hold that big, beautiful hand of yours, like right now.
Oh, so beautiful.
Thank you.
Kathleen, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and yourself with us today. I'll be back because there's many, many more things I'd love to ask you with your experience in history in these critical times. You know, as you said, being around some of these true leaders, these true visionaries, they're pioneers in healthcare and emotional, spiritual, modern emotional, spiritual healthcare. So thank you again for joining us. I appreciate your time, and we will chat soon.
Okay, thank you. Take care.